Hey everyone, so this week in W200, we're talking a lot about social networking and building an online digital footprint where you have this online presence that's very positive and very focused around education and professionalism so that when future employers search for you, or maybe when parents or students search for you, that they find um, online sites and social networking pages and profiles that sort of convey the message of who you are as a teacher and what your philosophy is in education and show what you're doing to benefit the field of education through these online social networks and online profiles and things like that. So this is going to be a short 5 to 10 minute presentation on how to build and manage and sort of increase your online presence as well. And we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk briefly about why this is important, why it's important to have an online presence, especially in education. And this will be something you cover in class a lot this week as well. We'll talk about some general tips for increasing your online presence. After that, we'll talk about search engine optimization and why it's important for things like your teacher website and your e-portfolio especially. Then we'll talk about how you can easily track viewership and readership of your website or of your blog, things like that. And we'll end with some overall ideas to keep in mind moving forward. So the first thing to cover is, why does this even matter? Why is it important to have an online presence for those of you who want to be future teachers? And there's a few things that building a positive online presence helps with. Note the emphasis on positive. You'll talk a ton in class about things to avoid, and hopefully a lot of it is common sense as well. But always be careful about what you're posting online. First thing, it helps a ton with finding jobs and employment opportunities. Every job you apply for nowadays, the employer, whether it is a principal or a superintendent, they are going to search for you online. They're going to see what exists out there on different social networks, and they want to know who you are online. And one option could be that something bad comes up, and obviously that's not a great way to go. But it's also not good to just have nothing show up. If they do a search for you and it's clear that you don't really have an online presence or a digital focus to what you've been doing, nowadays that's kind of the expectation, that you will have an online presence and a positive one, and that it's professional and focused on education. So if you have two candidates applying for a job, and one nothing shows up with when you Google them, and the other, they've got a very active online persona where they're participating in Twitter chats and they're blogging about education, there's going to be a heavier weight to that and to that teacher having that active online presence. So definitely super important in marketability. Another thing is that it helps you connect with colleagues from all over the world. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, these are all great social networks. Twitter especially, for having conversations and making connections with people who are in your subject area or in your area of expertise, and you can make great connections and have great conversations from people who are outside of your immediate bubble, which is awesome. It's also great along with that for generating new ideas. It's really easy to kind of get caught up in, oh, I did this last year, it worked pretty fine, I'll just keep doing it this year. But if you're engaging in those conversations with other people online, you're always going to be sparking new ideas and new possibilities for your classroom, which of course is beneficial to the students and to their learning. And you can contribute to the conversation. There's an enormous conversation online that's happening about best practices in education, about what works, about how can we give students what they need, what are the best ways to incorporate technology in the classroom. And it's really important to be a part of that conversation and to contribute to it so that you can help the field grow as a whole and to find better ways for what works and what doesn't work, and how can we move the field of education forward and in a positive way. The next point we're going to talk about is some general tips for increasing your online presence. And the first thing you can do is obviously just exist on these different social networking sites. Make sure you've got a professional Facebook profile, a professional Twitter profile. LinkedIn, Pinterest are also good. Twitter is huge in education, especially for teachers who use education. A lot of people kind of shrug Twitter off as being, oh, what's the point? You can only share a few characters. How could it be useful? But there's these things called Twitter chats, which we'll talk about more later, but they're awesome ways for connecting educators through social networks. So Twitter is huge and definitely worth signing up for, creating a professional account, and getting involved on Twitter. And then once you've created those accounts, get involved, share things, comment on things, like, tweet, contribute regularly, build digital connections with these other educators and these other administrators throughout the education online networks. And so let's talk a little more about Twitter chats now. A Twitter chat is essentially a conversation that happens at a specific time every week, and it's around a certain topic. So Indiana eLearn is a great one to check out. You could use a website like twubs, twubs.com, and you could follow this hashtag, and you can see that every week on Thursday nights around 8 or 9 p.m. Central, there is going to be a conversation with Indiana teachers coming together, talking about technology in their classroom, sharing ideas, and it's in a really, really powerful way to increase and expand your community, to make connections with other teachers, and like I said before, just to get some great ideas. And so I would highly recommend checking that out. And if you just Google like getting started with Twitter chats for education, there's a ton of awesome resources to help you get started. And the other thing you can do is regularly update your ePortfolio, your teacher website, and add a blog component to it. Even if you're just adding some short reflections about what you're talking about in class, or an idea you had, or a field experience you had, anything like that, just to start writing, start thinking about these ideas and putting them out there in a public space. That is huge as well. All right, so we've covered those first two things, some general tips and why it's important. Now let's get a little more specific, and I'll show you some examples here. So first up, search engine optimization, or maybe you've seen SEO, that abbreviation, before. This is a way where you can tag your website or your ePortfolio with certain keywords and phrases. And you can use this to help search engines find your website more easily. So that way, when people do a search for you, you actually come up and you're at the top of the list instead of way back on page 30 of Google where no one ever looks. And so what you should do is think of these keywords as search terms. So when someone types something into Google and you want yourself to come up, what are those keywords? What are those search terms? And let's take a look at Wix and Weebly, because that's what a lot of people are using for their ePortfolio, and it's super easy to set up. All right, so here we are in Weebly. I've clicked settings at the top for my page, and you'll see over here on the left there is SEO, search engine optimization. And what you should do here, you can add a description for your site, and then you add in your keywords. And these can be multiple words, that's fine, as long as they're separated by a comma. So your goal here should be to get specific. Think about what people would be searching, teacher portfolio, elementary classroom, things like that, education technology. All those things are great for putting into your keywords. And then you just have to save it here. For Wix, it's pretty similar. You go to your pages at the top left, and for each page, you can click on the little 3 dots settings here and click Page SEO. And then you'll be able to put those keywords in right here, just separate them by a comma, and hit done when you're done. And it's that easy. Just make sure you, of course, save and publish when you're finished. And that way, it becomes so much easier for people to find your site, because Google regularly goes through basically all the sites online, picks up those keywords so it knows what sites have what keywords, and then when people search for those keywords, that's how it spits back its results. It's also based on traffic, of course, but adding in these keywords is going to help a ton for search engines finding your sites. And that way, when people search for you, you actually come up. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is tracking viewership and readership. And this is a little more advanced, but it's something that can also be really helpful in increasing your online presence. So you can use something called Google Analytics, which is a free tool to track who is visiting your site. So in this example, it'd probably be your ePortfolio or your teacher website. And this can help you see what people are liking, what pages and posts are popular, where are people visiting, how long they're staying, where are they visiting from, and it can provide some more insight into your visitors. It can also show you how visitors are getting to your site. Are they coming from other links, other websites? Are they coming from your Facebook page? Are they coming from just a Google search, which would be called organic traffic? So it gives you a better picture into who's coming, how they're getting there, what they're visiting, what they're looking at, and how long they're staying. So the way you can do that is just do a search for Google Analytics or analytics.google.com, and the first time you sign up, you'll put your website information in, and they'll give you what's called a tracking code. And all you have to do is paste that code into your footer. And for Wix, it'd be the same thing. You would just add in the HTML object and drag it into your footer. So then it's going to be on every page of your website. And there's a ton of YouTube tutorials for this as well, or you can always send me a message if you need help. But the nice thing is, once you get that footer code installed, you can get all these detailed analytics of who's coming to your website, where are they coming from, what pages are the most popular, and all sorts of things like that. For me, I always like looking at the location, the geographic location, because I think that's interesting because you can get a worldwide breakdown, or you can get a state-by-state breakdown, or even you can zoom in and get a city-by-city breakdown as well, which is just kind of fun to see where everyone's coming from. So the very last thing we're going to talk about is just some overall ideas to keep in mind, big point, big picture things moving forward. The first thing is start on this today. You're just starting out in the School of Ed program. If you start building something now and do it bit by bit, by the time you finish this program, you're going to have a really nice online presence that speaks very highly to who you are as an educator and what you are contributing to the conversation. And I'd say spend just a little time a week increasing your online presence, even if it's just 15 or 20 minutes a week where you are switching to professional teacher mode. You're going on Twitter to favorite some tweets, to make some new connections. You're going on Facebook to share some things. You're going onto Pinterest to expand your education boards. That makes a huge difference if you do just a little bit every week. By the time you're done, you'll be rock solid. Maybe you're writing one short blog post every other week or something like that. But just do a little bit each week to where you're continuing to add to that online presence. Then also look for examples and role models in your subject area. Find people who are doing a really good job of having this online presence and see what they're doing, how they're doing it, and of course try to connect with them. Connect with them on Twitter. Try and have a little conversation with them. Do some exchanges and tweet at them and favorite their tweets and try and make some connections. Never hurts to try and make those connections and let those teachers know that what they're doing is awesome and you'd like to learn from them. And then the last thing is, the main point is just get active across these social networks. Get in there, see what's going on, watch some Twitter chats, participate in some Twitter chats, and just get a feel for this digital conversation that's happening in education today and become a part of it. That's huge, and it's going to help with so many things: getting a job, making connections, coming up with great ideas. It will really just help in so many professional aspects. So that's it for this. Thanks for watching. Hope that was helpful, and have a great spring break, everybody.